Okay, so today in this video, I'm going to show you how I edit, my kind of editing workflow. I'm not going to be showing you specifics of the editing tools I use. I'm going to show you the workflow part of it. That's what we're focusing on in this video. So what I do is when it comes to editing, once we have all the photos imported into the Lightroom catalog from the last video, that was step 3. Step 4 is we're going to do our edits and export. So you always want to make sure, first of all, you are in the library view up here, and that you go over to all photographs and just make sure all photographs are selected. Sometimes if you do multiple imports, it might just be showing you the photos from the last import. So you just want to make sure you have all photos, and then you can see them all down here. And to actually edit, remember you do want to be in the develop module. But for what we're doing here, just going through and flagging the photos that we want to do for the client sneak peek, we can just go ahead and use the library view, or we could use develop. It doesn't really matter for this part. Okay, so what I do is I put it on the first photo, and I always use the arrow keys. I use keyboard shortcuts because it's just so much faster. So my right hand will be on these arrow keys, the right and left, and my left hand will usually be on X or the flagging. Usually P is for flagging. X is when you want to remove a photo if you don't think you want the photo in the catalog anymore. What you can do is press X. Let's say I got like 2 of the same photo. Let's say I have 2 of these almost exact same photos. I realized I kept the same one and I want to get rid of it. I just flag it. See how when I pushed X, it turned it to a gray color. And now later, what I can do is I can use this filter tool down here to go through and filter any rejected photos. So these are rejected photos, and then what I can do is just right click and remove photo. And it's gonna ask me, do I wanna just remove it from Lightroom, or do I wanna completely delete the original photo, the raw version, from the disk, wherever I saved it to. And usually, if I already have 2 copies of it, if it's a duplicate or it's just a bad photo, or I realize it's blurry, or I just don't want to keep it and show the client for whatever reason, I will just delete it from the disk. So I'll make sure my hard drive is plugged in when I do this step of deleting. It's usually maybe like 10 to 20 photos I missed, when calling in Photo Mechanic that I want to further delete. So I'll delete them from the disk just so they're gone, and the catalog is a little smaller that way. So I don't want to delete this one though. So what I'm going to do is press U. That's the other shortcut I use a lot. So P is flagging, X is reject the photo, and U is unflag or unreject. So U is kind of like undo, which is easy to remember that way. So now the reason we're not seeing photos is because we still have this filter on, the rejected photos. So we need to go over here and unclick that filter, and now we'll be able to see all the photos again. By the way, if you're not seeing this filter over here, go over to this drop-down menu. And you're gonna wanna go down here, and you might have to check the filter you wanna see. Actually, is that the place where you do it? Maybe this new version of Lightroom just has it automatically already on there, looks like. But you can always use this option. So if for some reason you don't see over here, you can always go to the drop-down menu and see your flagged photos, turn the filters off to see all of them, see the unrated photos. So you can always use this as a backup. So now we're gonna go through and we're gonna use the arrow keys going right, and we're gonna just press P to flag any photos we might wanna edit for the sneak peek, like our favorites. And then remember, if I don't want to, I can press U to unflag, and you'll see that I've already gone through this catalog and flagged my favorites. So once you do that, and you flag a few from each scene maybe that you want to edit or show for the sneak peek, you're gonna go filter using this one for flagged photos. Or, you know, you can always go over here. I sometimes still use this one because I'm so used to just going to the drop down and pushing flagged photos. So now I only see the flagged photos, and it looks like I flagged about 36 photos, and now we can go through and edit the sneak peek. So now you're gonna need to go up to develop module. If you try to like go edit in here, this isn't the full like editing tools right here in library. These are like, I don't know what these are, quick edits or something. I've never used them. So you're gonna wanna go to develop. Develop is where the develop module, you'll see this view of all your editing features. So once you're there, we have the sneak peek photos flag that we want to edit. So I'll go over to number 1 and I'll start editing. I do use a preset over here, and it's really basic. I still have to, you know, manually go through and edit, tweak the white balance and the exposure, and you know, play with skin tones and all that, even with my preset, but it does give me a base of some general things I do with every single photo. Like I can show you what's in my preset. Some of the things I always do is usually boost the exposure by just a little bit. I usually bring the blacks down for my style and up the shadows. This isn't my exact preset because I've already edited this photo, but this is just some stuff I do. I like to bring the clarity down. I think built into my preset is like clarity down by 5 or something, just to get a little dreamy look. And I do play around with some of the HSL features for my preset, and I always have like noise reduction up a little bit. I have this sharpening at just 35 and 1. And then I always check enable profile corrections for the lens corrections to take away like vignetting and things. So that's like built into my preset because I don't want to have to go through and check this for every photo, right? So that's why presets are good to just use. So you have some of the basics already done, and then you can go through and do the rest. So once when I'm going through, I also give this 5 stars if it's a sneak peek. And the reason I do that is just later. So if I want to find the sneak peeks, I can edit by 5 or filter by 5 stars. Sometimes I end up actually like editing more than that for my editor to see or for whatever reason. And I like to flag all the photos I've already edited, and then the 5 stars are the sneak peeks. That's just my filtering system. So once we have all of our photos edited, so I'm gonna show you, remember today I'm really showing you my workflow, which includes, you know, this step is the sneak peeks, and then exporting all the photos for my brand clients to go ahead and see a proof gallery of all the photos, even the ones I didn't edit yet, and they get to actually go through and pick their favorites. So now if I'm gonna go ahead and export, I need to take this filter off because right now we're only seeing 36 photos. So I'm gonna unclick the filter, and now we should see the full 398 photos. Just double check over here that it is 398, which it is. And then what we're gonna do is select all the photos to export. Oh, and actually, I'll show you actually what in my workflow, what I do is usually I export the sneak peek photos. So see, I can just click the 5 stars to find the sneak peeks again. So let's do that first. We'll we will export the sneak peeks. So I'm gonna click Command A. Command A is kind of a Mac shortcut where it selects everything that your mouse is on. So Command A, you'll see it highlighted all the photos. It doesn't really matter which one you are on first. It looks like number 6, I was selected first. It doesn't matter. They're all highlighted and they're gonna be in order for the export, and we're gonna wanna right click. So your right click or 2-finger click, if you're using like a little mouse pad like I do, whatever it's called, magic pad, whatever Apple calls it now. So you're gonna right click, and then you're gonna wanna go to export, and you actually can like save some of your user presets here. So that saves you an extra step, and I'm gonna show you how to create those. But basically, right now we're exporting the sneak peek, which is gonna be social size. So you can always go up here and click export, and it's gonna open a general window. But if you already have your presets together, go ahead and click the size you want. I'm gonna click social size for the sneak peek, and then it is gonna pop up Oh, I see, actually. Cancel that. Let's just do it this way. This is actually the way I usually do it. That's why I was like, wait, what's that? Just go to export, export, export. Keep it simple. I think you can do that shortcut if you like already, if it's a standard file name, then you can use like the sneak peek shortcut if it's just all the standard custom file name. But for me, I like to name it with the client name under custom text. And so that's why I'm going to do it this way. So you'll see over here, I have my 4 user presets that I've saved. There's really 3. The Dames Collective, this first one, that's for a specific client. I just work with them a lot. And so I write their name, like when I click, see, it just saves me the step of typing Dames Collective one time. So anyways, let's go to social size, and this is Shannon Sneak Peek. And so what we're gonna do is just write her name, Shannon, and then we're ready to export, and we just click export. Now, it's that simple, okay? If you have all your settings together. So I'm gonna go ahead and export. And I'm gonna find, it's gonna ask me, where do you wanna put it? So for me, I have a client folder that ultimately lives in my hard drive, but while I'm working on the client session, I do like to just keep it on my desktop these days, now that I have a real computer, to keep it simple. So there's Shannon, 02 Shannon, because we did her shoot in February. And then I'm gonna go to Sneak and I'm gonna click open and it's gonna export. Now I've already done that for her, exported, but all I would click is open and it would start exporting. I'm gonna cancel this now. So we exported the sneak peek. So that would start exporting and you'll see like a little thing up here that it's exporting. And then what I would do is take those 5 stars off, Command A to select all the photos, make sure it's the full 398, right click, export, whoop. And now we are going to give Shannon her proofs so that she can go through. I'm gonna create a proof gallery using Shoot Proof, and she'll be able to go through and select her favorites. So I have a proof preset. So I'm gonna click that and you'll see a few things changed. So what changed is, I title it their name in proofs. And I'll just say Shannon proofs, just so I know these are proofs. These are not the real files if we ever got confused. But yeah, then what we're gonna do is, that's it. We're gonna export. We click export and then we find where we want to put it. So right now it's still on the sneak peek folder because that's the last one we used. So we can use this drop down menu and find Shannon and go that way, or we can, use the left-hand side, find the folder that way of where we want to put it. But I actually already have a little proof folder set up for my clients in like my master folder. And I would just click open and then it's going to export into the folder. So I've already done it for her. So cancel. And then I'm going to show you now. I know you're wondering, Meg, what about all those export settings? Like, what do you do? So I'm going to show you now. So get ready to kind of like pause the video and you'll want to take a screenshot if you want to see the exact settings that I use for each user preset when I export the photos. Let me just pull this down. There we go. So you can see everything. So let's start with the most important. Let's start with the high res. So once I get Shannon's proofs back, I'll go through the gallery. I'll open this up again and I'll go through and flag the photos that she chose. And then I'll edit those and I will export all of those using this high res preset for their final high resolution gallery. So this is what, my screen looks like every time, because the only things I ever really want to like change is the name and the image sizing. Everything else stays the same, no matter if I'm doing high res or proofs or social size for sharing online. These are really the only 2 things that change. So we're going to go through each thing really quick so you can make sure your settings are in alignment with this, yeah. Oh my gosh, this is turning into a long video. Okay, so let's start with number one, export location. So up here, you're just gonna, go through this, export a photo, and that's how you get to this window. By the way, you have to be exporting something. And then you're gonna click drop down export location. You're going to make sure this option is selected. Choose folder later, which is useful for presets. So we always wanna choose our folder. If we don't have this one selected and we have like one of those top selected, it's gonna go to like some folder on your computer that you're not telling it to go to. So you wanna always choose folder later. So that's just standard. I always have that one checked. And you wanna make sure this bottom one says ask what to do. So basically once you say, open or export, it's gonna pop up with a window that says, where do you wanna put these files? You always want it to ask. And then everything else, there's nothing else checked. It should look like that. And then you're gonna minimize this. So that's it. Once you have that set up, you never have to do anything again. If you are saving, what we're gonna do is create, your custom export user presets. And then you shouldn't ever have to change that again. It should always say choose folder later. When you look at it here, that's what it should say. Okay, now file naming. I like to go to this drop-down menu and say edit and do custom naming. And you'll see it kind of recommends different things you could name it, different dates. You can use these, like I like to, moving forward now, I use didn't always do this, but I use this one that has the year, month, and day, just so that whenever you're like putting all your folder files together, maybe in like a shoot-proof gallery online later, if you want them in sequential order, like the newest shoot to the oldest shoot, this is really helpful. And just for like organizing and finding photos later, it's just helpful to always have the date and start with that first. So that's my new kind of system. And then I insert this custom text, which you can find down here. If you click insert, it'll go ahead and put that in. I just put a double one in because I already had one. But you can grab these and like move them around. If you wanted, the client name or custom text to be first, you could put that first. But I like to do date first, custom text, and we only need one, so we'll delete the second. And then the last thing I put is the number of the photo sequence. And I do 001 because for me, I'm usually not delivering more than 1,000, like a couple hundred photos. I'm not a wedding photographer, so I don't really deliver like 2,000-3,000. So 001, that is plenty for me. If, let's delete this and say you wanted to do a bigger number, you could go down here and these are all the options that they have that'll automatically name. So I like this one, so I'm gonna select that one and click insert, and that's it. And then I'm gonna click done. So that you can see we just created that. So that's giving us the date. It's telling us the client name, and then it's also telling us the start number. Now you'll notice my date, it says January 2020, January 4th. So actually, her photo shoot wasn't on the 4th, but the problem was I didn't have my camera date and time correct when I did her photo shoot. So just make sure, if for some reason you're like, why is it always giving me the same date or whatever for the month and the day? It might be because your camera is, you haven't set up your camera with the current date. So just make sure your camera's set up, because I think pretty sure it pulls that information from the camera and the files. Okay, so now that we have that, it should always look like this, and we want to keep this expanded because we're going to customize it. We don't want to have to open it every time. So keep this expanded, because what you're going to do when you do a export and name the file is you're going to put the client name or whatever you want to put, but you're going to put a custom text there so that you don't have multiple images with the same, name. And the other thing for this is you just want to have start number at 1. Unless for whatever reason, say you export 50 and then something happens, or whatever reason you want to export the next 50 later, you can always start at like 51 for that second export, so that you're still in order, whatever. Just keep it at 1 right now. Make it simple on yourself. Just export all the files at once. And the next thing is, this is like video settings, so we're not going to do anything there. So it should just look like this, and you can minimize that. And then file settings, you're gonna always wanna have it on JPEG. So this is where, I get questions about how do I convert RAWs to JPEG? Here is where you do it, on the export in Lightroom. And so it should just say JPEG. You really only wanna use JPEGs for printing, for giving to clients, for online use. I don't know when you would use these other options, but I just keep it on JPEG all the time, and I also keep it on sRGB, color space. So sRGB is kind of like a universal color space, and that just has to do with printing. So, if your client ever wants to print this, or you ever want to print photos, you want it to be in sRGB, because some printers, they can only print in that color space. And then quality should always be at 100. So I always keep this at 100, you guys. I never, ever change that. So then I'm gonna minimize this. And I never really need to expand that again once we make these export presets, because it's always gonna be the same, JPEG, 100% quality, sRGB. I can kind of glance just to make sure that it looks right, but you only have to do these settings one time following this video, make your presets, and then you're done, okay? So image sizing. So this is one I keep expanded overall, because this is one I change sometimes depending on the size. So this is really the only difference of, say, like the high resolution images and the social size is this window right here. So if you want high resolution, I always keep it on 300 for the pixels per inch. They say, 240 to 300 is high resolution for printing. And this only matters with printing. It doesn't really matter for online use, but, just to keep it simple, I just keep it at that all the time, okay? And then if I want to change the actual size for like high resolution versus online sharing, here's where I do it. So if you check resize, it's going to give you some options there. And what you want to do is click the drop-down menu and go to long edge, and that's where you're going to pick how big do you want the long edge of the photo to be for online use. Well, just for this export for social size. So that's where you would change it to 1200. I like to use 1280. I did some research and that's just a standard size. Actually, no, I think I'm changing it now to 1200. I used to do 1280, but now I'm doing 1200 just because it's just more universal, easier for the client. A lot of blogs use 1200 pixels as like the maximum width. So anyways, 1200 is kind of a universal social size for sharing online. And this is actually, now we have created social size preset. But I'm going to uncheck this box. So say you don't want that. You want to keep it in high res because that's what we were focusing on. I'll just keep it like this. So this is the high res preset. You can take a picture of this anytime, stop the video to make sure you have the same stuff. So output sharpening, I just put screen low. Somebody told me to do that. That's why I do it. I don't think it really makes a big difference. Metadata, I just have all metadata on. Remove personal info. I think I could just have personal info in there. I think that might be like if you label your, copyright your images on, then you can have your name, Meg Marie Photography, kind of embedded in the file. But it's not a big deal if you don't. I mean, you might want to just to have your name on there. So that's why I unchecked that box. So it'll have Meg Marie Photography. And watermarking. I don't do a watermark, but if you wanted to apply a watermark to your photos, you could set that up with this. And then JPEG Mini. So you might not see this on yours, and you probably won't unless you know what it is. This is actually a plugin that I purchased, and you can see it over here. This is plugins that you can purchase. I purchased JPEG Mini, and it's I added it into here, and it's in every export preset that I have, because what it does is it actually minimizes, takes out unnecessary information in the file sizes, and it makes them a lot smaller, which is, easier to download, easier for backing up, takes up less disk space, and easier to load on your website. I purchased this for around, I think it was like under $100 to get the licensing for life for this. And it is really helpful because it makes the photos about half the size when you export even the high-res photos. When you export them with this plugin, it makes it half the size, but you can't see a difference. Like you can't see a difference even if you're blowing it up to like, I've seen like, yeah, like a 3 to 4 foot canvas, you still can't see a difference. It just removed really unnecessary things that we don't need for the quality. So I highly recommend that plugin. You can search for it online, just type in JPEG Mini, and a lot of information will come up for you about it. But you don't need it, you don't have to have it. And then post-processing, I just say do nothing. This would be like if you wanted to do some fancy thing, extra editing or something when it exports, which I don't want to do. Okay, so that's do nothing. So now's the time, take a screenshot if you haven't already. This is my exact setting for a high-res export. And once you have this all set up on your screen like this, you're gonna wanna save it before you do anything. So before you click export, you're gonna wanna save this preset we just created so that you never have to create it again. Now you'll always have it if you save it right now. So we're gonna click add. And that's it. It's gonna ask you what you wanna name it. I already have high res, so it's not gonna let me name it like that, but what I can do is name it high resolution. The full name. Okay. High resolution, and I'm gonna put it, yes, in this folder, user presets, which is the only folder I use. I guess you can create more, but yeah, create, and then you'll see, boom, it just popped up right there. So now we have it saved. How cool is that? So we can just like toggle around, but we can always go back to this whenever we export, and then all we have to do is type in the client's name, and all the other settings are good, 300, 100% full resolution, and then we would export. So now that I showed you how to create that, what my high resolution settings are, I just want to review with you social size. So what you can do is once you have this one created, the high res, you're going to just simply change a few things. So let's just start on high res, keep it simple. And for social size, for like the sneak peek or for my own blog, when I export, I'm doing it in the social size. What all I'm gonna do is this thing that I showed you earlier, which is click resize to fit, long edge, 1200 pixels. And that's it. That's the only difference with my high resolution preset and my social size, is I'm making it much smaller by changing that long edge so it's easier to load online, and it doesn't affect the quality online. You can't see a difference online. The only time you see a difference with the resolution and the long edge pixels is printing, which is why it's so important to just communicate to your client that high res is for printing only, social size is for online. You want to use the social size, 1200 pixels, for online, because most computer screens on laptops and phones are not bigger than 1200 pixels wide. So, you know, it just makes sense. Why would you want to use a bigger file that isn't good? You're not going to see a difference if it's not bigger than, if you're not viewing it on a screen that's bigger than 1200 pixels, you're not even going to see a difference between high res and social size. So you might as well use the social size for website, sharing online, putting on your phone, because it takes up much less space. So that's the reason for it. So once you just change this one tiny thing, you're gonna click add, and you just created your social size. So then you're gonna say social or whatever you wanna call it. I'm just gonna call it social S right now because I already have a social size, so it's not gonna let me call it that. And then I'm gonna create. And that's it. Now we have it saved in user presets. It's gonna always be there in your Lightroom on this computer device, you know, that you're creating it on. And you can also, I believe, export these, but they're really easy to create. It really takes me like 2 minutes to create these. This video is longer because I'm like going slow and explaining stuff, but it takes like 2 minutes. So I just recreated them when I got a new computer and downloaded the new version of Lightroom because it's pretty quick. So once you have the social size, the last one that I do, high resolution, social size, and proofs. So the last one I do is just for my own personal workflow because I let my clients see a proof gallery of all the photos, and that's just really to pick their favorites before I edit. They don't need to be very big. So I just actually bump this down to like 900 pixels. So it's a little less quality, but it's good enough for them to go through and star their favorites and be able to get a good idea of what the photo looks like. And it's just easier to deal with. It'll download and upload faster at 900 pixels. So I'm going to go ahead and add, call it proof preset, proofs, clients, whatever you want to call it. And then create. And that's it. I just showed you, I just created the 3 presets I used. So that's done. So you would never have to do it again. I'm going to go ahead and remove. This is how you want to remove stuff. If you want to start over or remove it, just remove this way. So I'm going to remove these 3. So I have my 3 originals. So these are the 3 I use. And so just a reminder, let's cancel out of this. Now that we created them, they're going to be in there. And let's make sure they're all selected. They are 398 photos. Let's go to export and let's go to high resolution, and we're gonna put Shannon's name. Has the date, double check, 100%, 300 full resolution, looks good. And we're gonna export. It is that simple, you guys. Now that you've created the preset, this is all it's gonna take every time, about 1 minute to export, and you're just gonna tell it where to go. And we're gonna find her folder, we're gonna find high resolution, and we're gonna open to export. I'll just go ahead and do it so you can see, even though these aren't edited all yet. They will be later when she picks her favorites. So now it's exporting, up here you can see 398 files, and you're just gonna wanna wait until those are done. You can minimize Lightroom, work on something else. Try not to work in Lightroom at all while it's exporting. Don't do any other edits to the photos because that can kind of mess it up. But yeah, it's exporting and it's gonna be right here in this folder once it's finished. This is where I told it to go. So you can see right now in live time, you can see them being exported. And it's, let me know if you have any questions, but that is really the whole export process, how to edit, how to create export presets, and how to actually export and where they're going to, when you do that and where to find them.